G'day YouTube, it's Turbo Tristan here, and in today's video we're going to stick in some max peating rods, new gen coilovers into this red EF Civic. Now I know what you're all thinking, you've seen me do that 100 times, so I'm not really going to show too much of it. I've fitted a billion sets of these and that's not what my channel's about. We're also going to fit some hard race lower control arms to the EF, take a few measurements, and then we're going to start getting it ready for the engine conversion because I want to get stuck into that ASAP. But first I've got to do this. It's part of an obligation to get some measurements and things. So bear with me, I'll save you all the boring stuff. If you want to watch videos about coilovers, there's 100 of them on my channel, check them out. We're going to get stuck into this one, stick around. So the wheels are off. First inspection, everything under here looks amazing. There's a little bit of paint chipping just here, which might crack when we roll the guards. And these guard liners are most likely going to have to come out if I'm going to roll these guards. Now, when the car was down on the ground, there was quite a lot of clearance here. So maybe we don't roll the front ones now just because of how rare and hard to find these will be. And I guess we can always do it later if we want to go lower because it still has all of the factory guard liners on there and front genuine mud flaps. In the back it was the same story. Now for me, the first thing I would do would be rip out this trim here and then roll these guards up. There's no guard liners, so it's not going to affect anything. Not sure, I'll talk to the owner about that and we'll see what we do from there, but everything looks pretty straightforward. These arms here all look exactly identical to the EK ones. So I'll check all of that out, take a few measurements. Worst case is we unbolt the hub from the back here and swap that out with the disc brake setup, should swap over. But we've got to change these arms here for the hard race ones because the coilover setup is very different. So I'm going to take all of that apart and then get onto the installation. Same story on all sides, of course. Rear suspension is out, and I just want to point out one thing. I'm already in love with this car. How cool are EF Civics? So much easier to work on than an EK or an EG, especially for the rear. Just pop off these caps, take off these dust caps, and you've got easy access to everything right there in the back. Now I've got the suspension out. Here they are laid out on the ground. You can see the new Max Peating Rods Generation 6 coilovers next to the original factory ones. Now, absolutely nothing wrong with these, and we've proved in dyno shock videos that these 30 or 40-year-old, in some cases, Showa shocks, which is the factory brand of Honda, still work absolutely perfectly fine. You'll notice here the Max Peating Rods coilovers are set to 2 different heights straight out of the box, which is very unusual, but these are a brand new model, and the reason why we're doing everything now instead of later once we've done the engine swap is just to get some data. So I'm going to do some measurements here and get everything sorted and send that back to the guys over at Max Peating Rods. We've also got the hard race lower control arms, which we'll be replacing. These you get from Elusive Racing. Go see Kenny and the boys down there. Grab yourself some hard race LCAs. Much better than these dinosaurs, although they are in really, really good condition. And they've been rust coated and everything, probably when the car was new, which is why they're in such great condition. Even the bushes look original and perfect. So yeah, very, very impressed. Now to whack them in. Coilovers are in, lower control arms are in both sides. That's all measured up, matched. Hopefully it's not too low and we don't need to adjust it. Time to do the fronts. The front struts are out. I've got them here side by side. Now these ones, fresh out of the box, look to only really be 15mm or so different as far as the height goes. So I'm probably just going to chuck those in for now, make sure this distance on both of these is the same. I'll match it to the shortest one so there's the greatest difference in drop. Put the wheels back on and measure the car. I forgot to film the install of the front and show you what it looked like when they were in, but same as the last video. They're in now. With the 30mm clearance, there is still like so much room here. So I'm going to report back to Max Peating Rods and let them know that there's probably not enough adjustment there in the front. If that was me, I'd want that really, really low. I'd want it to at least there. So we need another 30mm in the front. And the back looks okay. We've taken out quite a bit of the guard gap, but still heaps to go. There's 45mm of adjustment in the back. But that's that, nothing too exciting. Coilover install. I'm going to take some measurements, report back to MXR, probably see how far I can wind these down, see what it looks like, get some photos, get some snaps, then get on to doing the rear control arms. So over to my magical whiteboard of all things a learning. I took some measurements before I put the coilovers in, and from the ground to the top of the guard was 625mm, center of the wheel was 360, and there was 200mm between the chassis and the concrete. Now, after fitting the coilovers, we're exactly the same in the front, and we only have 30mm of adjustment. In the back, we're 4 centimeters lower. We've got 45mm of adjustment. People are probably getting sick of me talking about Max Peating Rods. You know, they help the channel out, they help me grow, and they provide these parts for me to test at no cost. So for me, it's a no-brainer. The good thing about that, and the positive side of that, is that these guys are getting data. They don't actually have these cars in China where they're made, so they can't go out to their local JDM meet, grab a few guys, test their cars. They can't do any of that. So they're relying on guys like me, Young Static, other YouTubers overseas to do all these testing for them. And this sort of data is very, very important so that when it comes time for you guys to buy your own coilovers, we get all of this right. So I'm going to send these measurements back to China, and from there we can get it right, make sure we have a full 3-inch up and down drop available in the front and a 3-inch up and down drop in the back. We don't want to wind the shock travel down too much because we still need the shocks to go up and down, which is the improvement of the new twin tube coilovers that they've got. So we don't want to just wind the springs down, wind the cups up, and then just meet in the middle and slam it and have no travel and just be bouncing on springs. We don't want that. So what we're going to do is send that info back. Hopefully they'll send us another set or tell us what to do to adjust these, and then we can get them set up perfectly. But data is good. We're back over at the drawing board, and I've taken a few more measurements. So overall, we were only able to lower the front of the car around 20mm, and the back we were able to lower about 50mm, which in my books is not good enough considering it was about 120mm above the tire. So we've still got quite a bit of a gap above the tire. So over here on the board, I've drawn a diagram of a coilover. One of the subscribers said that they used to learn lots of stuff from my channel and they're not learning anything anymore. So I'm going to try my best to explain how all this works and why you need certain adjustment in certain places. Now, OG subscribers will know that I didn't always know this, and this is something I'm learning every day. I happen to work personally in a business that has a whole suspension arm and branch, and I ask all the gurus that have been doing this their entire lives questions every day. So I'm slowly getting to know most of it, or getting to know my way around it. So I think I can do an okay job of explaining things. So what we have here is what I like to call the cup, and this is the bit that the shock sits inside. So the bit with the threads on it and the rod here, that's called a shock. And then you have your locking collars here and here, which gives you your adjustment. If you unlock the bottom collar, you can wind the shock body down or up out of the cup. If you unlock the top collar, then that affects the preload of the spring. So there's a certain amount of travel that this rod needs to go down inside the shock body and back up. So there's a certain amount of spring in the spring, if you will. The spring will compress a certain distance before it bottoms out and then becomes inefficient. And then same thing with the shock rod. So this rod here will go down into the shock body and then bounce back out, and it will have a predetermined maximum and minimum stroke. Usually on most cars it's between 1 and 2 inches, so they don't go up and down too much. It's just like a psh, psh, up and down. They don't go all the way up and down. Some cars have long travel suspension, but most cars, they generally only go about 30 mil up and down, so 3 centimeters or just over an inch of bounce. And then if you have lowered shocks, they'll usually go about 50 mil up and down. So that allows you to put a shorter spring in. So they're already halfway down, and then they'll go a little bit more down again. So that's why you have that. Now the issue that we have here is this adjustment distance between here and here isn't enough. We don't want to mess up this, so we've kept this the same, and I've wound this all the way down here into the body. So this area here goes all the way down into there, meaning that I don't have any extra room to lower it down anymore. We still have the shock travel, and we've wound this all the way down inside the cup, and we're only left with a very small area left. And that's not even adjustment. Even though there's threads, you can't really adjust that, because then you're going to start affecting the preload on the spring and the shock travel. So what we need to come up with is either a longer shock travel, which means we can then move the spring further down here and still have preload on it, and then still have the adjustment here between 30 mil and 70 mil, which is usually ideal. And I think when we put these in, you sort of want to start with around a 30 to 50 mil drop. We didn't get that here. We got no drop, and in the back we got a 40 mil drop, which was pretty awesome. But even when I wound everything all the way down, we were only able to get another 15 mil, which means overall we got about 2.5 or 2.25 inches of drop in the rear, and we got 1/2 inch of drop in the front, which is no good if you ask me. So I'll send this information back to Max Peating Rods and we'll get that sorted. There'll be an update later on. Hope you learned something. Next on my list was to do the rear trailing arms and replace those with a disc brake conversion from an EK Civic, which we have a full set down there. Many of you guys said in the last video that they wouldn't fit. They're the wrong size, they don't work. Some guys said they will, some guys said they'll bolt straight in. Some guys said you can just unbolt the hub, swap the hubs over, keep everything here factory, which is a pretty good idea. I've just measured everything up. Everything appears on the car to be exactly the same, except for one thing, and that is the distance between this bolt hole and that bolt hole. This one's about 3 centimeters longer. So if I just use this piece, everything else should be exactly the same. This one's much shorter. So obviously once I take one side out, I'll just check the curvature, but even the curves and everything look exactly the same through there. So I'm very confident that that will work. Plus I'm also pretty lazy. I'll happily just change one arm rather than hubs and muck around with all of that sort of stuff, because I still have to change handbrake cables, which are already all built in there and on that one. So I'm going to call it there. I didn't realize how late it was, and tonight's a school night. I've got to go to work tomorrow. So I'm going to go have some dinner. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to spool up, bring the boost, and we'll see you in the next video. Hope you're loving the EF Civic content. Also, buy my EK.